I was born into the kind of privilege that most people only see in glossy magazines. Our mansion in Charleston stood like a monument to Southern grandeur, white columns, sprawling gardens, and the faint scent of magnolia drifting through the air. To the world, we were the Harringtons, symbols of wealth, class, and success. But to me, that mansion was nothing more than a gilded cage, one where freedom was a luxury I could never afford. My name is Ethan Harrington, 35 years old, heir to the Harrington fortune, and at least on paper, the man destined to carry my family's legacy into the next century. My father, Reginald Harrington, built his empire through sharp instincts and an iron will. To him, life was a game of strategy, and family, just another piece on the board. He used to look at me across his mahogany desk, his piercing grey eyes unyielding, and remind me of my duty. Marrying wisely, Ethan, is the greatest investment you'll ever make, far greater than any stock or property. He was never unkind in a traditional sense, but he was demanding, unyielding in his expectations. My childhood was not one of laughter or warmth. It was a constant performance, a test of how well I could embody the Harrington image. I learned early that emotions were weaknesses and choices were illusions. Even my mother, Eleanor, had become a ghost of herself. She had once been a sculptor, creating art that captured the spirit of the low country, the rough textures of the marsh, the grace of a heron in flight. But father convinced her to abandon it, insisting that a true lady had no need for clay-stained hands. I often caught her staring out the window, her eyes distant, as though remembering the woman she used to be. My younger brother Lucas, on the other hand, rejected every rule. Reckless and charming, he chased thrill after thrill, gambling, parties, fleeting romances. I was the one who cleaned up after him, settling debts and smoothing scandals. He used to laugh and say, "Lighten up, Ethan. Life's too short to live in father's shadow." He didn't understand that I wasn't living, I was surviving. The only light in that suffocating mansion was my sister, Sophia. She worked as a social worker, spending her days helping families through crises that our world of privilege pretended didn't exist. She had our mother's kindness and none of our father's arrogance. On humid evenings, we'd sit on the veranda watching the fireflies. I'd confess how empty my life felt, and she'd smile softly, saying, "Ethan, happiness isn't betrayal, it's your right." Her words stayed with me, though I didn't yet have the courage to act on them. That changed one sweltering summer afternoon, when my father sent me to inspect a small orchard on the outskirts of Charleston, a potential investment opportunity. He wanted me to determine if the land was worth adding to the Harrington portfolio. "This isn't just business," he'd told me, his tone carrying that familiar weight of expectation. "It's about protecting our name. Don't fail me." The drive took me away from the city's elegance and into open fields lined with peach trees. The scent of fruit and soil filled the air, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. When I arrived, I expected to meet a nervous owner eager to please a man of my position. Instead, I found Lila Bennett. She was nothing like the women from my world. Dressed in jeans, a plaid shirt, and work boots, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her auburn hair was tied back, a few strands escaping to frame a sun-kissed face. "You must be Mr. Harrington," she said, extending her hand with a firm grip. "I'm Lila Bennett. Come on, I'll show you around." There was no deference in her tone, no attempt to impress. As we walked through the orchard, she spoke with genuine pride about sustainable farming, local hiring, and soil preservation. Her voice carried warmth and purpose. When she talked about her team, her eyes lit up. "These people aren't just workers, they are family. We take care of each other here." I listened, mesmerized. She wasn't chasing profits, she was nurturing something alive. For the first time in years, I felt what it meant to be passionate about something real. By the end of the tour, I realized I hadn't asked a single question about profit margins. I found myself wanting to stay, to hear more. I told myself I needed to return for follow-up evaluations, but the truth was, I simply wanted to see her again. Each visit stretched longer than the last. We shared lunches beneath the shade of peach trees, our conversations shifting from business to life. She spoke of growing up in a small North Carolina town, of learning resilience from her grandparents, who'd farmed through droughts and storms. I shared pieces of my world carefully, leaving out the suffocating wealth that defined me. She had a way of making me feel seen, not as an heir or executive, but as a man capable of more than duty. Her laughter was genuine, her honesty disarming. For the first time, I wasn't performing. I was just Ethan, but the illusion of freedom couldn't last. One stormy evening, my father summoned me to his study. He was standing by the fireplace, brandy in hand, his expression cold as stone. "I know about her," he said without preamble. "That woman Lila Bennett. A field supervisor from a working-class family. Do you truly think she belongs in our world?" I felt my pulse quicken. "She's kind, intelligent, and passionate. She belongs where she chooses to be." He set down his glass with a sharp click. "You're throwing away generations of legacy for sentiment. You'll end up regretting this foolishness." "I love her," I said, the words surprising even me with their certainty. "And I'm done living by your rules." He laughed then. A bitter, hollow sound. "Love? That's a luxury for men without purpose. Choose her, and you're no longer my son." I stood frozen for a moment, my whole life flashing before me, the mansion, the titles, the endless expectations. Then I turned and walked out. My mother stood halfway down the stairs, tears glistening in her eyes. Lucas raised his glass in mock salute. Sophia watched silently, her expression steady and proud. That night, I drove through the rain, my heart pounding with both fear and exhilaration. When I reached Lila's cottage near the orchard, she opened the door without hesitation. I told her everything: the fortune, the ultimatum, the loss. She listened quietly, then took my hand. "You haven't lost anything," she whispered. "You finally found yourself." In the months that followed, we built a new life together. We rented a small house in a quiet Charleston neighborhood. I left my father's company and took a modest job consulting for small farms. The pay was less, but the satisfaction was immeasurable. Every morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through open windows and the scent of peaches drifting from her clothes. 3 months later, under the blooming magnolia trees of that same orchard, we were married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends, Lila's family and Sophia, who came secretly. As she hugged me, she whispered, "This is your freedom, Ethan. Never forget it." I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free, not rich, not powerful, just human. And when Lila told me she was expecting our child, her smile radiant in the morning light, I knew I had finally broken free from the cage that had bound me since birth. She wanted me to try reconciling with my father. "Maybe a grandchild will soften his heart," she said gently. I wasn't so sure, but for her I was willing to try. Little did I know, the true test of freedom was still ahead. Christmas Eve arrived that year with an unexpected hush. A thin layer of snow dusted the cobblestone streets of Charleston, turning the city into something out of a dream. Lila sat beside me in the car, her hand resting on her rounded belly, a gentle smile lighting her face. "It's going to be fine, Ethan," she said softly. "Your father may be stubborn, but he's still family. Maybe the thought of a grandchild will change things." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the snow, pure and forgiving, could wash away years of bitterness. But as the gates of the Harrington estate came into view, towering and cold against the winter sky, dread coiled in my stomach. The mansion loomed ahead, lights glowing from every window, the illusion of warmth masking the chill within. We stepped through the heavy oak doors into a scene of orchestrated perfection. The grand hall shimmered with gold garlands, crystal ornaments, and the scent of pine and roasted turkey. My mother, Eleanor, was the first to greet us, her face pale but kind, her eyes flickering between relief and fear. "Ethan, you came," she whispered, squeezing my hand before her gaze moved nervously toward the dining room. Reginald Harrington sat at the head of the table, a portrait of authority even in his twilight years. He didn't rise. He simply looked at me with that same cold, measuring stare I'd known all my life. "So," he said, voice echoing off the marble floors, "the prodigal son returns." Beside him lounged Lucas, nursing a glass of scotch, smirk firmly in place. Sophia offered a tentative smile from across the room, her eyes urging calm. Lila and I took our seats at the far end of the table. The silence between us all was thick, broken only by the clink of silverware against china. After a long moment, I cleared my throat. "We didn't come to fight," I began carefully. "We came to share something important." I glanced at Lila, who nodded. "Lila's expecting a baby. Your first grandchild." For a fleeting second, I thought I saw something soften in my father's eyes. Then it vanished. His jaw tightened, and his voice came out sharp as glass. "That child has no claim to the Harrington name." Lila's hand froze around her fork. "Sir," she said, her voice calm but firm, "we didn't come for your approval. We came because family should know each other, no matter what's happened." Reginald laughed, a low, bitter sound that echoed through the hall. "Family? You took my son from me, and now you come waving sentiment. You think love excuses betrayal." "Betrayal?" I repeated, my voice trembling but steady. "You called choosing happiness betrayal. You walked away from everything we built," he thundered, rising to his feet. "Our name, our legacy, our standing, thrown away for what? A field worker's affection." Lila flinched, but I stood, anger replacing the years of silence I'd endured. "You built an empire, father, but you destroyed the people inside it. Mother lost herself trying to please you. Lucas lost direction trying to defy you. And me. I lost years pretending to be a man you could love." The words hung between us like smoke. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, not physically, but with the sharpness of his tongue. Instead, he turned away. "Leave," he said simply. "You've made your choice. Don't come back." My mother stood then, tears streaking her face. "Reginald, please, enough, Eleanor," he snapped, and she fell silent, trembling. She met my eyes briefly, filled with apology. She couldn't speak. I placed a small, wrapped box on the table. "This was meant for you," I said quietly. "It's a handmade blanket for your grandchild." No one spoke. Lila reached for my hand, and together we walked toward the door. Sophia's voice broke the silence behind us. "Ethan. I'll visit soon." I looked back and saw her tears glimmering in the candlelight. Lucas raised his glass mockingly. "Cheers to the outcast," he said, and I didn't look back again. Outside, snowflakes swirled through the air, soft and pure. Lila slipped her arm through mine. "It's over," she whispered. "You did what you could." As we drove away, the mansion's lights faded in the distance. For the first time, I didn't feel loss. I felt peace. The gates closed behind us, but they no longer felt like prison bars. They were boundaries I had outgrown. In the months that followed, our son, Jordan, was born, a healthy, bright-eyed boy who laughed easily and cried loudly. When I held him for the first time, tiny fingers curling around mine, I felt a love so vast it washed away every trace of regret. Lila and I built a life that was modest but full, one of simple joys, shared dreams, and honest work. I poured my energy into a new calling. Using my experience in finance, I began consulting for small family farms, helping them stay afloat in a world dominated by corporations. Eventually, I started a nonprofit dedicated to supporting local growers and sustainable practices. It didn't make headlines, but it changed lives. And every time a struggling farmer shook my hand in gratitude, I felt richer than I ever had as a Harrington. Lila thrived too. She eventually bought the orchard we'd first met in, turning it into a community hub where children learned about farming and sustainability. On weekends, we hosted gatherings under the same magnolia trees where we'd once married. Laughter filled the air, replacing the silence I'd grown up with. Sophia became a regular visitor, her bond with Jordan growing strong. My mother sent gifts now and then, a quilt, a letter, but she never found the courage to leave my father. Lucas's life, however, spiraled downward. His reckless habits caught up with him, and the family name that had once shielded him offered no protection. Years passed quietly. One spring morning, Sophia called with somber news. Father had suffered a stroke. He's asking for you, she said softly. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, to let the past stay buried. But another part, the one shaped by Lila's compassion, knew I had to face it. When I entered his room, the once commanding man looked small, diminished. His eyes flicked toward me, filled with something I'd never seen before, regret. Ethan, he whispered, his voice frail. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting our legacy, but I only destroyed it. I stood there, silent for a moment, then said quietly, You didn't destroy it, Father. You just built it in the wrong place. He nodded weakly, tears pooling in his eyes. A few days later, he passed away. I didn't feel anger, only sorrow for the years we had wasted. And the years since, I've often told Jordan the story of his grandfather, not to vilify him, but to teach him. I tell him that pride without compassion builds walls, not legacies. I tell him that love, integrity, and kindness create roots far stronger than money ever could. As I walk through the orchard now, watching my son chase butterflies among the peach trees, I realize that the legacy I once feared losing was never my father's to give. It was mine to build. And I built it not from wealth or status, but from freedom, courage, and love.